All right, let's talk about classes now. Classes are the major difference between C and C++. And a class basically is a structure that you can have functions inside of it. So a structure with a function inside of it is a class. A class can have public and private variables, meaning if a class has a public variable, that variable can be used elsewhere in the program by other calls. If it's a private variable, it can only be used inside the class. So once the class is done running, it kind of disappears. So really, a class is just another way of grouping variables. So now I'm going to take some variables and a function and group them together. So we have arrays to group values of the same type. We have structures to group values of different types. And then we have classes to put that all together with functions. All right, so what does a class look like? This is a typical class. So class space day of the year, curly braces, and then my public variables, and I'm going to call a function called output, and then I'm going to have two variables, date and month. And then I'm going to end it with a curly brace, and I'm going to have a semicolon at the end, just like a structure. So really, it's formatted exactly like a structure, except you're going to have a public category and maybe a private category, and you can put functions inside there. All right, again, sometimes they have public and private variables, and it looks like this. So class, day of the year, curly brace, I got some public stuff, then I've got some private stuff. So remember, public can be called outside of the class. Private stuff can only be used inside the class. So nobody else could use day and month inside, or whatever these variables are inside the class, outside of the class. So just as an example, given what I just talked about, this, where I've got public input output, which are functions, and then private month and day, if I do day of the year and then call it today, I can't do today.month and today.day. Those are not allowed because they can only be used inside the class. So the functions that are inside the class, input and output, can use this because they're all inside the class. But you can't call a private variable by itself outside of the class. Does that make sense? And typically when we use classes, we create the variables privately. We don't do a lot of public variables unless we're doing functions or something like that. So when we create a class, we typically create the variables private because they're only used by things inside of the class. All right, then moving on. So they're declared the exact same as any other variable. Remember, a structure is considered a variable, a class is considered a variable, which is why we give them other names. So here, the day of the year class, we're going to call it today and birthday. So we're going to have two variables, one today and one birthday, and both of them are going to have the class day of the year. So in that way, day of the year for today and then day of the year for your birthday, two separate variables, but they're both using the class day of the year. All right, so we discussed privately, you can't just call these out with C-ins and C-outs in the main program because these can only be used by things inside the class. But inside the class, you have your two functions. So functions can call these the same way, today, month, today, day. So that can be used inside the function because the function is part of the class. But they cannot be used by things outside of the class. That's the part that always kind of throws people off. Because they're like, oh, we were calling it here. Well, that's because that's the function that's inside the class. Now, here's where it gets weird. If you've given your class a name or a surname or a variable name, like in this case, we took day of the year and we gave it an extra name called today, we can call the function today dot, and then the function's name was output, and then the brackets, and then so we could call it that way. So today dot output blah blah. But if you wanted to call the class without using today or birthday or whatever the surnames are, the extra names that you gave it, you can do that with a double colon. So I could do void day of the year double colon output, and that would call the function from day of the year, which is a class. So the double colon tells the compiler, hey, we're using a class of day of the year. Where normally you would give it a day of the year is space today, and then we would just use the word today to call that variable. But if for some reason we're just using a class without having variable names, we could do it with the double colon here. So that gets a little tricky. In your lab, I do not take points on or off whether you do this or whether you call it this way. However you want to do it, remember, at this point of the thing, I'm just trying to show you guys structure. Here's what a structure is. Here's what a class is. Here's what an array is. And then it's up to you to program and practice and get used to using those, and then use them in your code to help you code better or do something. So I'm not worried about style. I just want you to be able to make programs that work. All right, so let's look at an example. So here this is page 259 in the 6th edition textbook. It'll probably be 657 or something like that, but it's display 6.3 in your textbook. So we have our include stuff, and then we create our class before main. Remember, if you're going to use it, it's got to be declared or created before main. So class day of the year, I'm going to have 3 public values, and they're going to be a function, and then 2 integers, day and month. And then I go into my main. So day of the year, and then I'm going to say, hey, day of the year, I'm going to have I'm going to take that class, and I'm going to name one version of it today and one version of it birthday. So now I've got 2 different variables, but they're both going to use day of the year. And then enter today's date, enter the month as a number, that's going to be today month, today day, then I'm going to make birthday month, and then birthday day. So today month, birthday month, today day, birthday day. So I have to name them individually. All right, moving on. Then to test it, I do the output. Hey, today's date is today, and then your birthday is out. So now I'm calling the function from the class. And then in this case, the function is created independently of whether I'm calling today or birthday. So here the function just says, hey, I'm going to call day of the year. I don't care whether it's today's day of the year or it's birthday's day of the year, because no matter what, I'm going to be using the same thing. And if they said the day of the year or the month of the year was 1, it's going to be January. So whether today's date is 1 for the month or your birthday date is 1 for the month, it's going to give out January. So that's why here, instead of doing today output or birthday output, we can do day of the year : output, because it doesn't matter to us whether we're using today or birthday. We're both going to return the same value. So think back to when I did the example for the structure. What if Bob and Frank both had the same interest rate? I could call the function with the : because they both had the interest rate to calculate their stuff. So I hope that helps. And again, if it doesn't, make sure you ask this stuff on the discussion forums. It sounds easy to me, and I think I get the point across, but trust me, it's a lot easier in class with the whiteboard when you guys are staring at it. All right, then the last part, and then that's again what it spits out. So again, it's in your book, you can see it. But the big takeaway is, doesn't matter what I name these functions or the class. I could have a Frank, a Bob, a Joe Bob, whatever I want. If the output's all going to be the same and it's not interdependent on the name, I can just do class : the name of the function. But if it's something that is dependent, like what's Frank's account balance, Joe's account balance, where the balance is going to be different, then I have to call it Joe's account dot balance, or Joe's account dot output, Frank's account dot output. So I can't use the generic call to the class. I have to use a specific call to the variable that's going to be. All right, hopefully I've confused the crap out of you. Moving on. So remember, a class is a full-fledged type. So just like we have integer, double, boolean, character, we also have structure and class. So a class is a variable type. And we can have variables of a class type, or we can have variables of type class. And they can be passed by value or passed by reference. Remember, passed by value, I pass you a copy of the current value. Passed by reference, I pass you the memory address to where it's stored at, so you actually get access to the original. So if the original changes, your value would change. So a class type is just like any other type, and you can use it. Just remember, you got to put that period in there to identify which variable inside the class you're calling. Am I calling Joe's Joe's account dot balance, Joe's account dot interest, that kind of stuff. All right, and then structures versus classes. Structure, typically all members are public. and we don't have functions inside structures. Classes, typically all the data members are private, and we typically have a function inside a class. So perceptionally, technically they're kind of the same thing. You know, they both hold variables of different types. It's just a different mechanism. You know, a class can have a function inside there, structures don't. And then just the way we use them. Structures, we typically make everything public. Classes, we typically keep things private because we're just using them inside the class. All right, that really wraps it up. I'm going to do some examples next. Or at least go over an example of a class, and then you should be set for this week. All right, now I'm going to jump into a bigger example of classes and see if I can't take several of the different concepts that they talked about in the book and kind of put it all into one. So here, I got my standard set up and I've created my class. So my class has 6 functions. It has an input function, an output function. It has 2 different set functions. And you're like, well, wait a minute. How can I have a function with the 2 functions with the same name? Remember, this function has 2 variables. This function only has 1 variable. So I can have multiple functions because I can call set with 2 variables or set with 1 variable. And then the program knows what I'm doing. So we're overloading because we're using 2 names on the function of set, and we're good. And then I have get month number, get day number. So I've got 6 functions up here. And then I have 2 private variables, month and date. So remember, month and day here can only be used by this stuff here. They cannot be used anywhere else in the program. So I can't call day of the year month or day of the year day. It has to be called inside one of the functions. All right, so then remember, so I have to create my classes and structures typically above main because they have to be done first so they can be called in main. So I got that above main, and then I go into main. Now, in main, the first thing I do is I take the day of the year class and I give it 2 extra variables. So there's going to be today and box birthday. So I'm going to have a class of today and use the stuff in day of the year, and I'm going to have a class of box birthday and use day of the year. All right, and then I'm just going to ask you for today's date, and I'm going to put that in the input function, and then I'm going to send it out. Hey, today's date is, and it's going to be part of the output function. So I'm asking you for today's date, and I'm having you put that in, and it's now going to be part of today. Now, below that, starting here, I'm going to set the variables for box birthday, and I know that his birthday was March 21st. So then it's going to say, hey, Johann Sebastian Bach's birthday is, and then it's going to put those variables in output for box birthday. And then we're going to end. So real simple here. All I did was I created something that says, hey, enter today's birth date, and I put that as part of 2 functions, input and output. And then I set Sebastian Bach's birthday, and I made that part of Bach birthday output. Now, then I create an if-else statement. Now, this is just to check whether today's date is Sebastian Bach's birthday. So I've asked you for today, and then I've set Sebastian Bach's birthday, and then I say if today month equals Bach's month and today's date equals Bach's birthday date, then happy birthday Johann Sebastian Bach. Or if it didn't, then happy unbirthday, meaning it's not his birthday. So pretty simple program. I create the date, I set up Bach stuff, and then if everything's the same, happy birthday, and or happy unbirthday if it's not. All right, and then I create my first function. So this is day of the year, and I'm going to use set, and I'm using set with 2 variables. So because I'm doing that, I know I'm using this function because I'm asking for 2 variables, and he has 2 variables. So this one's real easy, and this set function here just checks to make sure the user put in proper values. What if the user put in for date or month, 13? Well, there is no 13 month. So it's just a simple if new month is greater than or less than 1, greater than or equal to 1, and the month is less than or equal to 12, then it works. Else, the illegal value, kill the program. And if day is greater than or equal to 1 and day is less than or equal to 31, then use day or kill the program. So remember, exit exits us out of programs, and you need to have stuff like this to check to make sure, because you get users do really stupid stuff. Hey, enter the day of the year. Whoa, well today is the 51st day of the year, blah, blah weird stuff. So you have to have something to check that. All right, so let's go to the next function. All right, here's the next function again. Now we're doing set with just one value, and again, he's just checking the month. Is the month between 1 and 12? If it is, then it works, or if it doesn't, kill the program. And then we're setting the day to 1. So no biggie there, so everything's kind of self-explanatory. So next function. All right, this next function here, what it's doing is it's calling the function getMonthNumber, and it's calling the function getDayNumber. So two separate functions here. And all it's going to do is whenever I use the getMonthNumber function, it's going to take the value returned by that and call it month. And then whenever we run the function getDay, we're going to take the value returned by that and call it day. Because remember, back up here at the top, we have a day and a month. So we have two functions to ask the user, hey, what is the month and what is the day? So it's getting the month and day from the user. And then it's going to pop those values into these two variables down here. So that's all that is. So that's the first four functions that we have so far. The first two, just make sure that somebody didn't enter stupid input. And then the second two, just make sure that we can ask the user for the day, ask the user for the month, and then we return those values as month. And we do that frequently in coding because we don't want to keep asking the user, we don't want to keep coding new questions or the same question over and over again. You know, I may want to say, hey, give me the month for this, give me the month for that, give me your birth month. When was the last time you were here? When was that kind of stuff. So by just having a function called getMonthNumber, I can always just call back to the function, so I don't have to keep reinventing the wheel every time I need to ask you for a date. All right, let's do the last two functions. So we have a function called input, and input's going to ask us for a day and a month, and then check the stuff. So remember here, way back in main, we said enter today's date, and then we called that. We said, hey, okay, run this function, function input. So enter today's date, and then run the input today. So if we go back down here, input is going to say enter the month as a number, then enter the day as a number. So what we're going to see when we run this is it's going to say, hey, enter today's date, and then it's going to say enter the month as a number. And then that's going to be recorded as a month, and then we're going to enter the day, and that's going to be recorded as the day. And then we're going to check if the month is less than 1, or the month is greater than 12, or day is less than 1, or day is greater than 31, kill the program. So lots of stuff in here to kill the program. And then we need to send something out to the screen, so we need one more function. All right, and this last function just sends stuff out to the screen. So if they plugged in 1 for the date, give them January. If they plugged in 2 for the month, give them February. And if for the month they put in 3, give them March. That kind of stuff. So just like the one we saw in the book. So again, big long program using this big complicated class. 6 different functions, 1 to get the date, 1 to get the month, 1 to ask the questions, 1 to do the output to the screen, and then 2 to check to make sure everything is correct. Did they enter a month between 1 and 12? Did they enter a day between 1 and 31? That kind of stuff. So I'm going to scroll through this real quick, and that way if you want to keep a copy of this, you can kind of write it down, and just remember you can just pause your screen. So again, the basic format, and then the class, and then main. Not too much there. I called my functions. I set the birth date for Sebastian, and then I said, hey, whatever. If my day matches his day, then happy birthday, and if not, happy unbirthday. And then first function, checking to make sure that the month and date are correct. Second function, checking to make sure the date or the month is correct. And then changing the get month and the get day to month and day. Oh, should only went that far. And then the last two, these are my input and then my output. So assuming this all works, I should be able to go here, run. So enter today's date, and now it's asking me for the function. So enter the month as a number. So the month is going to be 3. And enter the day of the month. I'm going to put it 21, like it's Johann Sabach's birthday. Let's go. Today's date is March 21st. Johann Sebastian Bach's birthday is March 21st. So happy birthday, Johann Sebastian Bach. And then remember, you always want to check your data both ways. So enter the month, enter the day, and then today's birthday is 21st. Johann Sebastian Bach is this. Happy unbirthday. So it worked with his birthday or worked without his birthday. So seems like an awful lot of code, and there's probably a lot easier way to do that. But I'm just kind of giving an example of a class and how it works. So big thing, make sure that your class is created before main. Make sure that you're not calling any private variables inside your program. The functions of the class can call the variables. No one else can if they're private. But if you made these all public, then anybody could call those. Remember with like today.month or today.day, that kind of stuff. Woo! All right, so that wraps it up. Remember, if you have questions, make sure you bring them up on the discussion forums or anything like that. Remember, at this point in time, I don't care how efficient your stuff is. I'm not grading anything on style or efficiency. Now, some of you guys that are really good at this stuff already, I might say, dude, this was really awesome, blah, blah. But I'm not giving any extra points or removing points for that. As long as your program works, that's the big gist of it. You'll get at least a C, at least a 70 on your lab. And then after that, we'll talk about it. But I'm pretty lenient on the labs. I'm more concerned that you can, if I can give you a problem and you can use code to fix it. Later on you'll work on your style and efficiency. I just want you to be able to, solve the problem any way you can. And trust me, I write some really long, nasty code. All right, so remember, questions, bring them up in the discussion forums, email me, let me know.